don't ask me too many questions.
Is it okay if I speak just like this without this? Because I want to be able to demonstrate things.
I think, I think
everyone can hear me okay?
hear you, yeah.
Okay. And I apologise now for my accent. I know I speak, it's hard to understand sometimes. So if I say anything that you don't pick up on, let me know. I'm happy to repeat things. So yeah, I came today to do a talk about track and field injuries, and we could talk all day. We could probably talk all weekend. But I picked two particular types of injuries. I picked a muscle strain and stress fracture, and I'm going to do specific examples. So with the muscle strain, I'm going to talk about a hamstring strain, and with the stress fracture, we're going to talk about a navicular, so a foot stress fracture. But these same principles will apply to any stress fracture or any muscle strain, and some of the principles to do with the foot will apply to other injuries like plantar fasciitis or shin splints, any of these things. So yeah, that's what I've got. Okay, as you all know, prevention is better than cure, so what we're all aiming for here is to train continuously. Yeah, less interruptions, the better. Best athletes are going to train consistently. The longer you can stay on track, the fitter you can become. When you get injured, you lose all the hard work you've done. And so, and apart from that, all the studies have shown that a previous injury is the biggest predictor that you're going to have an injury in the future. So, anytime you get an injury, you've already made it harder for yourself later on. So, just hammering home the point. So yeah, understanding is the key. You have to understand what causes injuries if you're going to have any hope of preventing them. And there are certain biomechanical factors that will predispose you to an injury. In my opinion, imbalance is the key that's going to lead to injury. Okay, so I've broken this down into three categories: an imbalance in flexibility. So if one side is tighter than the other side, it means that it's going to do harder work. Right? You need a certain amount of range of motion, and if it's hard to get through that range of motion, it's going to predispose you to fatigue, stress, injury. Strength, again, if one side's weaker, it means that it's harder for it to do the same thing that you're doing on the other side. And stability, if one side's less stable, it means it's more likely to collapse, which means it's going to put strain on something else. Everyone's keeping up with me okay? Don't speak too quickly. Yeah, imbalance. You're already going 100% when you run, so anytime something's thrown off balance, it means that it has to work from a weaker position. That makes it prone to fatigue and possibly failure. So your number one priority is staying balanced, yeah? Hurdlers, jumpers, throwers, vaulters, all these people do something different. You think I need a mic there? Okay. Hurdlers, jumpers, throwers and vaulters, all you guys do something different on one side of your body than you do on the other side, so you're going to create an imbalance over time. Yeah, that's obvious? So you guys all have to do more work on keeping yourself balanced. So today's goal, what I want to teach you is the ways to identify when you are more at risk of an injury being about to develop, and exercises you can do to then correct these imbalances. So ankles and hips are what we're going to focus on, because I really think they're the key here for runners. Yeah, they're the key to weight distribution, and apart from just injury prevention, good hips and ankles, good function at your hips and ankles helps you perform better. Study European Journal of Applied Physiology about 3 months ago. Less negative work at the hip and ankle during the stance phase was positively correlated to increased power. So basically, the better they're working, the more power you've got. Like as soon as you hit that stance phase and you drop your foot down, if you're unstable in your ankle and it drops, or your hip's a little bit weak, or it's tight there, the more energy you waste in that respect, the less power you've got. Okay? So yeah, we'll get on to first category, which is muscle strain. So in my experience, and I've treated tens of thousands of athletes, I worked Diamond League athletics, I worked with national athletics teams. In my experience, a tear is extremely rare. Like a genuine tear, I reckon, is maybe 5% of the time that people think that they've torn a muscle. Usually what happens is you're in a situation where you're overstretching and your body feels like something bad is about to happen, it's going too far, and there'll be a strong reactive spasm. Yeah, so it will feel the same, it'll feel as dramatic and as acute in its onset as a muscle tear, but unless you actually disrupt the fibres and the bleeding and the bruising and that sort of thing, you don't get a tear. So what we have to ask is, why is something overstretching? You know me, there's an imbalance, right? This is my theory, so thank you. So if we're saying that imbalance leads to injury, what should we look for with the hamstrings? What would be the obvious things? First would be the hamstring flexibility, right? So maybe one hamstring is tighter than the other hamstring, okay? This is an easy thing to assess, and we'll go through that in a minute. Or your pelvis is rotated, so imagine with your hips, so imagine a nice neutral position, and then you have a little rotation through your hips. Yeah, you might get a little bit tighter on one side, or particularly with hurdlers where you're going to be leading and flowing through, you're going to sort of rotate a little bit. Any time that pelvis shifts a little bit off perfect neutral, in this example where that left hip's gone backwards, the left hamstring now is coming from further back, so it's got to reach further to get forward. Yeah, everyone's understanding what I'm saying here? So that'd be a very simple example of how you can end up with hamstring strain. And number 3 is your firing pattern. So is this something that you guys are familiar with, the nerve firing pattern of the hamstring when you're sprinting? Yes? Everyone understands it, great. Maybe we'll do a quick demonstration on something like that. I think it's pretty useful. Okay, thank you. Okay, so hamstring length. Everyone knows a basic hamstring stretch, your straight leg sort of stretch, something like that. Yeah. I think a stretch like that is inexact when you're trying to assess the hamstring, because you need to have, if you've got an extended, so if the knee is locked out, that's going to bring the calves in because your calf muscles will cross the knee. You need to have good function at your hip, and you need to have good function in your lower back to be able to stretch. And so there are lots of ways to be good at that stretch, but they don't actually take into account the hamstring, if you know what I mean. So the stretch that I like to give is a bent knee stretch, because the hamstring is a knee flexor, right? Its function is to grab your lower leg there, your tibia, and pull it up that way. So that's the job of the hamstring. So what we want to do to assess if the hamstring is working well is to go the other way, right? So I'll give you a quick demonstration of the stretch that I think is a good one. And if anyone wants to hop up and try this out. Okay, I'll just let me hang in. Thank you, Mr. C. You owe me after cutting me off before. Okay, so yeah, basic way to do this stretch. Yeah, so instead of something like that, we're going to leave the foot about there. So there's 90 degrees, there's 180 degrees. We want to be about halfway in between, okay? Then you're going to come all the way forward. So you're right over you've taken out the hip and the low back now, yeah? So we're just going to look at the hamstring. From that position there, keep your foot down and you start to draw your hamstring back, yeah? So this is an easy way to test how the hamstring lengthens, which is obviously the key to its flexibility. Everyone understands that, yeah? Cool. Anyone want to have a go? Just me, okay. All right. We're back one, or is that all there? Oh, we're back two. Keep going. Okay. Yeah, so cool. We've done that. All right. Next one. So that's an easy thing to do. And so it's both diagnostic, right? So it'll tell you how tight you are. You do that stretch on both sides, and you'll be able to tell one side's good, one side's not good. So obviously then you are going to do more work on the bad side. Yep, cool. Yeah.
Chris, can we get one of the entities out there?
I would love that, yeah.
Come on, man.
Anyone with a bad hamstring?
Request for Amir to go forward. Come on,
Amir, come. Amir.
Does he have to be warmed up? Or?
The worse conditioning is in, the more effective this demonstration will be. So I need someone with a bad hamstring. That would be phenomenal. Anyone who has so yeah, just kneel down. Okay, so there's your 90 degrees. You can get a little bit further forward than that. Come all the way forward over.
Whoa.
Okay, and then start to draw your knee back. Yeah, so you see the difference here, yeah? That's as far back as he can get. It's nowhere near straight yet, as opposed to something like that, where you're all going to be able to hop up and put your leg down and you're going to be able to bend over it. But it's misleading, right? So this is a very specific way to assess the length of the hamstring.
Try the other leg and see whether it's the same or not.
Do you want to come up and do some work together? Cool. So make sure when you're doing this, yeah, that you're in the same position that you were. So, because it's very different to being caught up in the confetti. So it's very different to just put your foot somewhere between 90 degrees and 180 degrees. If you're going to be checking that they're the same, you want to do the same thing, yeah? So pick a spot, and then you're going to put your foot in the exact same other spot. It's not the same to put it out there as it is to put it in here. Cool. So there, and then coming back.
This is much better.
Yeah, this side he's getting a little bit closer. He's hurting though, I know he's pushing it, I like it. Cool, so you feel the difference on one side to the other? And you feel that the stretch is more effective for checking out? Thanks for agreeing, even if you didn't believe it. So yeah, like I said, we've got three things that we're going to assess, and the first one was the hamstring length. The next one we're going to assess is the position of your pelvis. Okay, so this is pretty easy to do. And this is I would advise any athlete in any event to do this as part of your warm-up. Like, this should be a regular way that you stretch. So what we're going to do with the pelvic symmetry is address the lower back first, just with a simple stretch, rolling your knees side to side. Then we're going to do the hip flexion. Then we're going to do the hip extension. Then we're going to do the internal and external rotation. So it's an easy way to do, with just a few stretches, to go through all the different planes in your pelvis. So, yeah, I'll demonstrate if no one else wants to.
Come on, guys. Come on, go up.
Come on, try. Try, you get back in. You're always behind the hip.
Anyone with a bad hip problem or anything that they want to get checked out, free assessment right now? Any problems? No. Hey, we got a green shirt. I like it. Oregon's off.
Hey, James.
Make the table.
So just have a lay down onto your back. Should I get him to take his shirt off, girls? Or? Okay, so first stretch, we're going to look at the low back rotation, yeah? Okay, so bending your knees up, keep your shoulders down. Okay, so we're going to take the spine out of it and just let your knees roll down to this side. So what this does is it take your hip, stretch it away from your upper back, because as soon as you get locked through those muscles in there, it's going to jam your counter rotation. Okay, so we're going to go down to the side, hold that for about 10 or 15 seconds, back up to the centre, down to the other side, 10 or 15 seconds. He's pretty good. So they seem pretty even on both sides. You'd go through that stretch, loosen up your low back, check if there's anything tight. If there is, you do some work on it. If not, you move on. Hug knees to your chest, so pop your legs out straight this time. Grab that with your hands, hug it up to your chest. Yeah, look at this. You set me up here, James. That's too good. Okay, so that's the stretch. And I like a variation to take all the glutes here. Bring this foot up there. Grab that with your hands and hug it towards your other shoulder, so up and across. Okay, but so what you're doing is you're starting to turn. Try to keep your hips a little bit square, and then just, yeah, that's better. Okay. Good. Anyway, that's just a little bonus stretch. So take that one, grab that, hug it up to your chest again. Yep. See, it's a little bit easier, different to the other side. Okay. So we've already picked up one. It's a little bit tighter on one side, so you go back and you do a couple more stretches on this side till you got them feeling the same. Okay, coming over and kneeling down for me. So the hip flexor stretch, yeah, for the muscles in front of your hip, your psoas or these kind of things, they're very important, and a lot of people get this stretch wrong. Okay, so because the psoas muscle crosses the hip joint, it actually starts in your lower back. And so the normal way people will do this stretch is just to kneel down and lunge. Yeah, everyone knows that stretch. But what happens as soon as that comes past your knee, is you lose half the muscle, because half the muscle is above the hip line. So what we're going to do, come kneel down here. So you want a straight line here, yeah, where you've got knee to hip, straight line, yeah, they should be directly under each other. And then before you lunge forward, what you do with your pelvis is just a little thrust like that, right? Tuck it in. You put his back into it, yeah? Because so be careful not to arch back or anything like that, but what we're going to do is just tuck that pelvis into a nice straight position, then you start to lunge forward. Okay, so you're already feeling it? Okay, so go back to the lazy way and just come forward. You see how much further you can get? Because it's cheating, right? You're not meaning to cheat, but you're losing the stretch on the muscle. Whereas if he tucks that pelvis in and holds it, you really find out how tight it is. Okay, cool. And you do that on both sides and you check how it's going. Yep. Okay, come and sit down. One more, sorry man. Okay, so internal rotation, external rotation of the hip is easy to assess. So yeah, just have a seat. So external rotation is just where your hip turns out. Okay, so you're just going to put your foot up on your knee. Wow, we've got him now. Okay, so grab that with your hands and you're just going to hug it up to your chest. Good. Okay, you're going to do it on both sides. Okay, and then so the opposite. Everyone understands the principles here. You check which side's worse. We're trying to get as balanced as possible, as loose as possible. Okay, and then the opposite of external rotation is internal rotation. So have your feet sitting apart like that. your knees shouldn't quite be touching each other, then push them a bit closer together with your hands. Yeah? He's picked a good one here, like, yeah, so you're going to feel this around the hip joint, yeah, around the capsule there. Again, you're going to feel if one of your hips is not working the same as the other hip. Okay, is everyone happy with all of this? Look at him, yeah, great work. So, everyone's got those? No questions about it? Oh, yeah, I was going to be dull, anyone? Okay, yeah, clicking on. Okay, so we're up to firing patterns. Okay, we talked about three things: the length of the hamstrings, making sure they're even on both sides, then the pelvis, making sure that it's nice and balanced, and then we're talking about the firing pattern. So this is the message from your brain through the nerves to get your hamstring muscle to contract, okay? And we're talking about the movement of hip extension. So this is where you're hitting the ground and you're going to be pulling through like that, okay? So this is where your power comes from. And all, like the way that the pattern works, there's supposed to be an order of muscle contraction. So the first muscle that's supposed to go off is your glute max, because this is your biggest, most powerful muscle, bigger than your hamstring. Then your hamstring comes and then your lower back muscles fire, okay? And so if this pattern is off, if your hamstring's firing first, what that means is it's being asked to do more work than it's capable of doing. Normally your glute max should be leading off, right? It should be doing most of the work. And if it's not doing that, it's asking your hamstring to do too much. So I hate to ask for a volunteer because I know it's like pulling teeth here, but does anyone want to come up and get their hip extension firing pattern assessed? Who? Richard?
Oh, yeah, Captain.
Captain. Okay, if anyone wants to come and check this, because this is a really easy thing that you can do. You can do it with your training mates or you can show your coaches. This is something you should all learn. It's very easy to assess, it's very easy to correct, and it's important, okay? So, by all means, come over. Okay, so what we're looking for, yeah, is the movement. So just this leg, lift it straight up in the air. Yep, good. So this is the movement, okay? So drop it back down. And what we want to see, we need to be able to contact 3 points at once. So two fingers there, one on the low back, one on the hamstring, okay? And just relax, yeah? He was just giving me a little tense. Appreciate it. Okay, so lift that leg up into the air. Okay, relax. So what we're looking for, you should feel when you've got your thumb there, that muscle gets hard first, then this one, okay? Lift this leg up. Okay, so this one is not working properly. So it was fantastic, you can probably see, lift it up. Feel like my thumb was the first thing to move here, and then his leg comes up. Okay, but on this side, lift up. It's coming straight from the hamstring, okay? So the hamstring is doing more work on the right side. So if we want to correct this, does everyone understand the procedure? It's easy to assess. Just put your finger in 3 points. If it's so close, like you can't tell, then it's probably not a problem. It should be obvious that the hamstring is going well before the other muscles. It's only if you spot that really obvious example that you do anything about it. But the way to correct this, all you need to do is the simplest thing in the world. So now, squeeze that glute first, then lift up. So you just create the pattern, yeah? And you relax. So you know that the pattern is the glute, then the hamstring, then the lower back. So all you do is squeeze your glute, hold it, then lift your leg. Cool? Everyone got that? No? Thank you.
So that's the firing pattern for probably hip extension.
Hip extension, yeah.
But how about during the recovery? Is it a bit different?
So
recovery action when you go like that, is it going to be a bit different?
Yeah, you don't want your glute firing first for that. They haven't actually, they've identified firing patterns for a couple of movements, but not for hip flexion. It's probably going to be rectus femoris. I'll say would be the first thing you want.
So you're saying that firing pattern is for just the hip extension?
Hip extension. Yep, absolutely. So most of the recovery is going to be just that. Like it's not actually a forceful contraction, it's just your leg coming back through sort of thing. So if you only get one thing right, I would get this one right. Cool. So everyone happy with? Good. How am I going, Jeff? Cool. Thank you.
Chris, question.
Yep.
So for Kenneth,
Yep.
we said that the hamstring is firing before the glute.
Yep.
So what can we do now?
Oh mate, you weren't paying attention. Do I have to get Kenneth back up and show again?
What should he be doing when he is in motion? You know, he can't talk to the hamstring, he can't talk to the glutes. So what's the message?
Yeah, and I probably wouldn't advise talking to your hamstrings, so it's worth bringing that up. But so, I mean, this is a pattern that when you do it enough times, when you train the movement, your brain remembers, like it's a neural firing pattern, okay? And so the more you do it, it'll become automatic, it becomes the pattern.
Are you saying that he should be doing it when he is running and thinking?
No, you would do this when you're stretching or warming up, like you would get it used to working that way, and then when you're running, like you're not going to think about that. But it will happen on its own, like it is the normal pattern, but something has happened with that, where that's been disrupted, and so now we just need to reset it. So if you do that exercise, you might do 10 of those in a row, do some stretching, do another 10 in a row, you know, something like that. You might do 3 sets of 10 in a day is probably enough over a period of time.
So what I hear now is we have to assess everyone, and then if there's a problem, then they have to really focus on training this thing.
Yeah, because it's very easy to assess. You just check, get them to lay down, lift it up. If there's a problem there, you get them to do that exercise. That's all you have to do. It's not too much work, is it? It's not that hard.
I guess all the athletes have to learn to do it.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You guys should absolutely learn how to do this. If you have any, like if you need me to email you about it or you want to come talk to me about it, but it's a very basic thing. So yeah, going through the whole, like a bit of a summary on your hamstring strain situation here, correcting the imbalance. So hamstring length, and what I like to do is get a tennis ball, okay, and just sitting down, something like this, like a hard chair, a hard bench, put the tennis ball in underneath your hamstring, and you'll find the spots where it's tight. You know, you'll put it in that spot and it feels okay, and you put it in that spot and it's nice and soft, and you'll put it somewhere else and it's going to be rock hard and sore. So leave the ball in under there, get your hand down, and you're going to work your thigh against the ball. There's a way to massage the muscle, okay? This is really important to do. Get it as soft as you can, then we go back to our stretch. Yeah, everyone remembers our stretch? This one, coming forward, pulling back. Got it? Cool. This is the way to correct for hamstring length. Then we want to correct for pelvic rotation. We went through that program before with the 5 stretches, lower back, hugging your knees up, stretching your hip flexors, internal rotation, external rotation. Cool. Good. And then you do the firing pattern. Then you do the firing pattern, which is your squeezing the glute, lifting the leg, and you just continue to do that pattern. And I would suggest, everyone knows what PNF stretching is? Yeah? Where you partner up with someone and you take their hip to this position, you get them to push back against you and then stretch it the other way. Everyone knows that one? Yeah? Cool. So I would recommend to anyone to do that. Cool, we can move on. Okay, so stretch fracture, right? This is a continuum, right? So you start off in a position where you have no stress on a bone, then over time you get a little bit more stress, and then that will build up into what they call a stress reaction. Yes, sir?
Hang on, I think there are a lot of newcomers here.
Okay.
Maybe you should show them the PNF.
Okay, yeah. Would you like to be my volunteer? You're halfway here.
Okay.
So, yep, just have a lay down wherever you're comfortable. So, this is, PNF is great because you get to trick your body, okay? So normally with stretching, you feel when you get up to the point of resistance that you cannot possibly go any further. Forget about, like it hurts and all that kind of thing, but it actually feels like it's hit a point where it won't go any further. And what we get to do with PNF stretching, there's a physiological principle where the nerve is unable to fire twice in a short period of time. And so, basic stretch, just take that stretch for example, and then you get you to push against my hand with your knee. Good. And you hold that for a couple of seconds and then relax, and we're able to go further. Because the muscle cannot fire, like it's just been firing to push you. Yeah, everyone understands that? And then the point where you relax, you have a gap where you get to move past it and the muscle cannot fire again. It's physically impossible for the nerve to fire twice that quickly. And so this is a great way to stretch. Like it's the cheating, easiest way in the world. You just trick your body, you get it to turn off the muscle and then you stretch through it. And so it's a great thing to do if you've got training partners or people that your coach or anyone like that you can work out with. To warm up, you can do a bit of an assessment as you're going. That one's a little bit tighter, do a bit more work on it and get it up to speed. But you can go through all different hip motions, so turn his foot in like that, push your foot back out against me. Good, so that does the external rotation. Take it out that way, push it back in, pushing your hamstring down, pushing your knee up, pushing your knee back up. You know, like every direction that you can think of. This works for your shoulder and your chest and all any different movement. The same principle applies. Cool. PNF, easiest thing in the world.
But then
Yep.
research also showed that you don't do PNF before you are going into training or competition.
Okay, there's about there's a half-hour period where they think that it can weaken the eccentric muscle contraction. So it's probably better to do after stretching, after a workout, or if you have maybe 2 hours before a big race or something like that, you can do a little bit of extra stretching. You're right, like just before a race is probably not ideal. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, so stress fracture, yeah, like I said, we're starting off with no stress, we're building up until we've got so much stress that we're going to break the bone, okay? And quoting myself here, the joint space between the two bones has become so compressed that the impact of landing is not being absorbed by the joint and instead it is transmitted into the bone. So just kick on. So the example, like I said, I'm going to talk about the navicular here. So normal foot mechanics. Everyone knows how your foot works. You land on the outside of your foot. When you land, then you're going to roll across through your midfoot, subtalar joint, and you're going to push off your big toe, because where you get all your power from. So poor stability and poor strength is going to cause your arch to collapse, because all the stabilisers for your ankle are in the ligaments on the outside. Yeah, so anytime you roll your ankle, about 90% of people roll their ankles to the outside. So anytime you do that, you've weakened those ligaments. And then there's an easy way to assess this, and we'll go through it in a moment. So if they're not working properly on the outside, as soon as you land, you're going to drop, aren't you? Like, you're not going to support your body weight on the outside. So yeah, stability and strength will cause that failure, and poor flexibility. So if you're stiff through that subtalar joint, the midfoot, instead of rolling across to the inside, you're just going to jam. And if you're jamming, then you're going to, like, the forces get stuck there instead of spreading through the range like they're supposed to. Both of these things will end up putting pressure to the inside of the foot, which is where navicular is. Roll on. Okay, so